In part 1 of this video series, the macOS desktop was referred to as the gateway to all things stored in and attached to your computer. And in this video, you'll see that the Finder window can aptly be referred to as the gate itself. When you open that gate/window, you can really hit the ground running when it's configured with items and features that suit your particular workflow. In this initial Finder window setup video, we're going to configure the stripped down Finder window from top to bottom and from left to right. And starting in, there's a few different ways to open a new Finder window. The first one being from the pull-down menu. And in that pull-down menu, we also see the hotkey command here, so let's try that. Hitting Escape, pressing Command N. Another way to open a new Finder window is through the Go menu. And yet another way is to click on the Finder icon down in the dock. And starting in on our left to right, top to bottom window build, these buttons were discussed ad nauseum in the previous video. So let's pick up from there and start in on this toolbar by right-clicking. This default setup should probably serve you just fine. But if you're feeling experimental, drag a couple of these add-ons in and see how they work for you. And when you're done, just press Done. And just as we were able to rearrange these status menu icons by pressing the Command key and dragging, you can do the same thing with these guys. So you just press down the Command key and drag them around. And having just suggested that you drag these add-ons and try them out, I'll go on to say that their functionality is essentially a rinse and repeat of what you can do by right-clicking. And in my humble opinion, they're overkill, and I prefer a minimal workspace. And if you opt to declutter as well, simply Command press and drag them off. As for the buttons that remain, this pairing works just like the arrow buttons do in a web browser. They're dimmed in a newly opened window, and then they light up as soon as you start to move around. And in videos to come, this grouping is going to be quite the topic of discussion. They toggle different window views, and of course each one has its own hotkey. Command 1 toggles the icon view, Command 2 toggles the list view, Command 3 the column view, and finally Command 4 toggles the gallery view. Keeping my toolbar buttons down to a minimum, I have a clear runway for another possible addition. I can add shortcuts to files and apps here. This is actually both an uncommon and redundant move, as shortcuts are typically added to the sidebar here, and as we well know, apps are added to the dock down here. But I like to separate my seldom used shortcuts from my often used shortcuts. It just makes everything so much easier to scan. And so my often used shortcuts will go to my sidebar, and my seldom used shortcuts will come up here on the toolbar. Deeply nested caches, libraries, and preset folders are a bit of a pain to get to. So on those rare occasions when I do need to get into them, having shortcuts here on the toolbar are both out of the way and easy to access. To illustrate what I mean, let's go to this Show in Finder pull down, and I'm going to toggle into our columns view so you can see how nested this folder really is. So I'm pressing Command 3 for columns view, and as I expand this window, you can see the commute that you have to go through to get to this particular folder. And so this is a template that I find myself digging for from time to time, and so I'm going to add it to my toolbar. And to add it to my toolbar, I'm going to press down the Command key and then drag it over and drop. And you'll see when I do drop it that this inactive window is going to update as well. I'm going to close this window, and I'm going to go down and grab another nested folder here. Again, I'm going to right click, Show in Finder, and again you can see this one's not quite as nested, but it's nested enough. And so I'm going to press the Command key and drag this into place. And just to repeat, keeping seldom used shortcuts up here keeps them readily available while also keeping them out of the way at the same time. And again, my sidebar is that much easier to scan. And at the far right end of our toolbar, this entry field is a rather involved discussion. So rather than get off topic with our Finder window build, Here's a reference to a dedicated video which is part of this Intro to the Mac series. This toolbar and all the other items we're about to discuss can be toggled in and out of view using these pull-down selections. So here we can see that the toolbar can be toggled in and out of view pressing Command-Option-T, so let's give that a try. And then our next item of discussion is the path bar. And the path bar is toggled in and out of view by pressing Command-Option-P, so I'm pressing Escape again, Command-Option-P. And the path bar is an at-a-glance wavefinder that offers a breadcrumb trail that's very similar to the one seen when right-clicking on the title bar, but the title bar only shows a generalized folder hierarchy, whereas the path bar shows the folder hierarchy and any files that are being selected. So you can see as I go through this world map folder, the different files are highlighting as well. And just as you can click on these files and folders in the Finder window, you can also click on them here to open an application and then the file or open a folder. So you can see here that we're in Graphic Resources. So when I double click on this world map folder, this window is going to repopulate. So let's give that a try. Like so. And let's hit the back arrow to get back where we were. And then the next item to discuss, which finishes up the bottom of our window, is the status bar. So back to the View pull-down menu, Show Status Bar, and that is toggled into view by pressing Command/, hitting Escape key, pressing Command/, and this is a pretty quick conversation. The status bar shows the amount of items in the folder, so there's 81 items in this Graphic Resources folder, and the figure right next to that file count is the amount of space left on the hard drive. The status bar also has one more feature that's specific to the icon view. So when I press Command-1 for the icon view, or click the button up here, down here in the lower right hand corner, you're going to see a little slider appear. So I'm pressing Command-1, and this slider allows you to adjust the size of your icons or thumbnails. And as soon as I hit any of the other views, 2, 3, or 4, this slider will disappear. So again, it only appears in icon view. So far, we've talked about the status bar, the path bar, and the toolbar. And so we've discussed all but one of the top to bottom items in our Finder window build. And that remaining top to bottom item is the tabs bar. And the tabs bar is toggled into view by pressing the Command-Shift-T keys. So I'm hitting Escape and pressing Command-Shift-T. And you can see that toggle in and out of view. And this tabs bar is going to be discussed at length in the next video. And now moving on to the left-right items in our Finder window build. The sidebar is toggled into view by pressing Command-Shift-S. So hitting the Escape key, I'm pressing Command-Shift-S, and our sidebar slides into view. And as mentioned in the first video, these Go menu items are typically seen on the sidebar. And those Go menu items are added by way of the Finder Preferences panel, which is found here. So I'm going to hit the Escape key and press Command-, to open up the Finder Preferences panel. And you would add those shortcuts by clicking these checkboxes. Shortcuts can also be added by just dragging folders on, and conversely, you can remove shortcuts by dragging them off. When you see that little X on your cursor, you let go, or you could uncheck a box. And if you recall in the previous video, on setup I had opted to store my files locally rather than remotely. And so these desktop and documents checkboxes are seen up here under my local favorites. Had you opted to store your files remotely, then you would see these two checkboxes down here in the iCloud section instead. After you've checked the shortcuts that you wanted to add, you can rearrange them by pressing and dragging and releasing. And you can move these sidebar shortcuts around by simply pressing and dragging. You don't have to press down the Command key as you do when you rearrange toolbar icons or status menu icons as we had discussed earlier. This sidebar section adds shortcuts to connected external devices into other computers, or your computer to be configured to a network. In this particular box adds shortcuts to 2 USB drives that I use for making automated backups with Time Machine. And if making backups is a topic that interests you, then check out the Time Machine video in this series. These two drives run in the background with Time Machine, so I don't really need shortcuts to get into them, but I still like this option selected for easy access. And finally, at the very bottom of our Sidebar tab is this Tags checkbox, which works in tandem with the items found in the Tags tab. Tags are a super powerful means of retrieving files at breakneck speed, and that topic of discussion also earns its very own video. Having checked a few boxes, let's close the Finder Preferences panel for now and drag on some folder shortcuts. Having opted to store my files locally, I don't have those Desktop and Documents checkboxes down here in the iCloud section, but placeholders for these two folders do exist in my iCloud drive. And for my own good reasons, I like to keep these mirrored folders on my sidebar, and so in keeping, these are the first two folders that I'll be adding. And as I drag them onto the sidebar, I don't release until I see this rule with the circle at the end. Were I to hover over another shortcut, as you can see right now I'm hovering over the iCloud drive and release, what I'd actually be doing is placing that folder inside of that other folder. And it doesn't much matter here because when I release, all I'm doing is placing the desktop where it already exists inside of the iCloud drive. I'll reiterate this later up here to drive that point home, but right now let's just get these guys down in. So again, I release when I see that rule with a circle at the end. And then I'm going to grab my documents. And so I have my local and I have my iCloud mirrored folders. When I choose one of these iCloud folder shortcuts, note how the title bar gives me a visual cue that that folder exists in iCloud. So to drive that home, let's select the Documents folder and the same thing for Documents. And were I to select the local Desktop and Documents folder, you can see that I've got a visual cue that that's a local folder. In addition to these two iCloud folders, I also like to add shortcuts to my current projects. Again, I drag and release once I see that rule with a circle at the end. To demonstrate how you can accidentally place one folder inside of another, I'm going to intentionally hover over this shortcut while adding the second shortcut. And when I do, you're going to see this window repopulate with the contents of this Colorful Birds folder. So I'm grabbing this Preview Panel folder, coming down and I'm hovering, and you can see that we jumped inside of this Birds folder. So I can avoid that mistake by just keeping my mouse pressed until I see that rule with a circle on the end, and accidental folder placement averted. Quick like, I'm going to go into my Projects in Progress folder and drag a few more current projects into place. And when these projects are completed and archived, I'll remove them to make way for new current projects. So you just drag again and release when you see that little X. And so we've completed our top to bottom Finder window build, and we just completed the left Finder window build. That leaves us with the right hand side of the Finder window where the Preview Pane toggles in and out of view. And again, the Preview Pane is toggled with the Command-Shift-P hotkey. If ever you wanted to quickly peek at a file without having to launch the application that created it, you can simply highlight it and press the space bar. The Preview Pane allows you to do the same thing, but even when maximized in size by using these double arrows that appear, you can see that the preview is a bit smaller than when pressing the space bar. But the size of this much smaller preview is offset by some pretty convenient on-the-fly functions that can be implemented without having to launch any applications. You can flip through multi-page documents using these arrows down here. We only have a 2-pager, but whether it's 2 or 200 pages, these arrows will work the same. And based on what type of file I have selected, these little contextual buttons down here will adjust to that file type. So here I'm selecting a PDF document, which is an agreement, and say I'd like to sign that agreement. I can do so by right-clicking and coming to Quick Actions, and you can see here that this little markup selection is identical to this one. So same thing is this, but easier to get at over here. So I'm going to hit Escape and select my little contextual markup button to sign this agreement. When I click this button, the macOS Preview application seems to launch on the QT to give me this menu to choose from. And when you choose this signature selection for the first time, you'll see a blank slate here, and so you'll click this Create Signature button, and when you do, you'll be given a few options to generate that signature. Just make sure you don't use ruled paper like I'm doing here, and also make certain that you like what you see before you hit this Done button. Because if you don't like what you see, I'm hitting cancel because I don't like what I see. If you don't like what you see, there's quite a bit of digging involved to get rid of these signatures. And that's way beyond the scope of this video, but down below I added a link to an article that'll walk you through how you would do so. So I'm going to choose my second page where I'm going to be signing on the dotted line. I'm going to come back and grab my John Hancock here. I'm going to drag that into position, size it up, and then I'm going to come back up here to this little icon here with a T on it, and I'm going to date this agreement. And then I'm done. And just as you would want to make sure that you like what you see in terms of your signature, you would want to make sure that your date set here is correct, because when you click this Done button, it's a done deal in terms of making these quick edits in Preview. If you hit Done and then wanted to change the signature or the date, then you would actually have to open the application, which in my case would be Adobe Acrobat. So everything's fine here. I'm going to click Done, and then I'm going to close. And now when I come to my second page, you can see that it's been signed and dated. If I selected a video in the Finder window, I could preview that video right here in the pane. And I could right-click for quick actions. And again, our little buttons down here are in context with a video. So I could use the quick actions to rotate if I wanted to for some particular reason. And I could actually trim the video without having to launch QuickTime or some other application. And also preview at a larger scale. And I'm not going to save this, I'm just going to close. Other contextual quick action buttons down here might include the option to export a text file like Microsoft Word or macOS Pages as a PDF. And if you really wanted to nerd out and make your own quick actions, you could do so by way of the macOS Automator app. For this deep dive, there's plenty of helpful references out there on YouTube. This section between the preview and the buttons displays a version of the more elaborate information that can be referenced in the Document Information panel. And to call up the Document Information panel, you can come up here and right-click and choose this Get Info. And of course there's a hotkey for that, which can be found here, which is Command-I. So again, escape, pressing Command-I. And for any of you PC users who happen to be in the audience, this Document Information panel is equivalent to the File Properties panel. Inside of this more detailed panel, I can see additional information on the video, such as its codec and so forth. And while we happen to be in here, I'm going to tout that tags video, as this top area is one of many ways to add tags to a file. And in that tags video, I'll explain how this typically ignored comments section can be a killer way of embedding notations directly within the file itself. When you notate here, you have no worries about low-tack post-its falling off in the shuffle. So that completes our top to bottom, right to left Finder window build. And for your day-to-day workflow, you might want to keep these Finder window features toggled into view. But in certain instances, you may prefer to clear the noise and pay more attention to what's inside of a window rather than the window itself. A case in point may be a folder filled with images that need to be reviewed to see which ones might need color corrections. Too bad to show you what I mean, let me click on this colorful bird shortcut and do an apples to oranges comparison. And to do that comparison, it just so happens that I have an identical Finder window waiting in the wings down here on the dock. So in this first window, I'm going to toggle into gallery view by pressing the button. And in the second window, I'll toggle to gallery view by pressing Command 4. And in so doing, you can see that the preview panel automatically hides because Gallery is a preview panel in and of itself. But if for any reason, you could toggle the preview pane back into view by pressing Command-Shift-P. So let's toggle these other items out of view in the second window, starting top to bottom and then left to right. I'm pressing Command-Option-T to toggle the toolbar out of view. And when I do, it just so happens that the path bar shifted up to the top here for some strange reason. And that toolbar toggle also toggled the sidebar out of view. Let's take on the status bar next, and so I'm pressing Command/, and then I'm pressing Command-Shift-T to hide the tabs bar. And then finally I'm pressing Command-Option-P to hide the path bar. And now I think you'll agree that when I rifle through the strip down window, you're paying more attention to the contents of the window rather than the window itself. So now let's end this video by taking this pimped out Finder window, and we'll do a speedy little flash quiz on these view toggles. So I'll start in with the sidebar. Command-Option-S to hide the sidebar. I'm going to go to the top and press Command-Option-T to hide the toolbar. And again, when I hide the toolbar, the status bar jumps up here for some strange reason, so let's pick that off next. So I'm pressing Command/. And then right beneath that, I'm pressing Command-Shift-T to hide the tabs bar. And to the right of that, I'm pressing Command-Shift-P to hide the preview pane. And then finally, Command-Option-P to hide the path bar. Ending this video with a splash of color, I'll preface the next video, where the General tab in the Finder Preferences panel will be reviewed. There's not much to see in this tab at first glance, but certainly a lot to be discussed. As always, thanks for watching this video, and hope to see you in the next video. See you soon.